Book of Malachi 3 verse 11, KJV. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground. Neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. A biblical story inspired by Malachi 3 verse 11. The protected harvest. In a small farming village in the land of Judah, there lived a humble farmer named Eliab. His family had cultivated the same land for generations. The soil was rich, and the vines that covered the hillsides once produced sweet grapes that were known throughout the region. But in those days, the land had begun to suffer. Every season seemed to bring trouble. Some years locusts came and devoured the crops. Other years, the vines dropped their fruit before it was ripe. Farmers worked hard, yet their harvests disappeared before they could gather them. Eliab had experienced this loss many times. One year he planted wheat, but a swarm of insects destroyed it before harvest. Another year he planted grapes, but the fruit withered before it could mature. Many farmers in the village began to lose hope. One evening Eliab walked slowly toward the temple in Jerusalem. His heart was heavy, but he still believed that God had not forgotten his people. At the temple, the prophet spoke the words of the Lord to the people. He read aloud the promise from God. I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground. The word struck Eliab's heart deeply. As he walked home under the quiet night sky, he repeated the promise again and again. Lord, he whispered, if you truly rebuke the devourer, then protect my harvest this season. When the planting season arrived, Eliab prepared his fields again. Some of his neighbors laughed at him. Why work so hard? One man said. The devourers will come again. But Eliab shook his head. The Lord has spoken, he replied quietly, and his word does not fail. He planted wheat in the lower fields and tended his grapevines carefully along the hillside. Every morning he prayed and worked faithfully, trusting the promise he had heard. Weeks passed. The young plants began to grow strong and green. But one afternoon dark clouds appeared on the horizon. Soon word spread throughout the village. Locusts are coming. Farmers rushed into their fields in fear. In past years, the swarms had darkened the sky and stripped the land bare. Eliab stood quietly in his vineyard and looked toward heaven. Lord of hosts, he prayed, you said you would rebuke the devourer. The wind began to blow strongly across the valley. The swarm approached the village like a moving cloud. Farmers covered their heads and waited for destruction. But something unexpected happened. As the swarm reached the hills above Eliab's vineyard, the wind suddenly changed direction. The insects were carried away across the valley toward the wilderness, far from the fields. The villagers stood in shock. The crops remained untouched. As the weeks passed, Eliab's wheat grew tall and golden. His grapevines became heavy with fruit. The grapes ripened fully and did not fall before their time. At harvest, Eliab gathered more grain and grapes than he had ever seen before. His barns were filled, and his vineyard overflowed with fruit. People from the village came to see the fields that had been spared. How did this happen? They asked. Eliab smiled gently and pointed toward heaven. The Lord rebuked the devourer. The story spread through the region. Farmers began to remember the promise of God. They realized that while storms and enemies might threaten their harvest, the power of the Lord was greater. And from that day forward, whenever the people saw the full vineyards on Eliab's hillside, they remembered the promise spoken through the prophet, that when God speaks protection over his people, even the devourer must obey.